Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. It's time for our weekly What is in the Stack. Sadly, just one guy still. Mike is busy this week, so gonna run through the best and new comic books of the week. 6 books in total to talk about for this week. And sadly, I am going to lead with the Amazing Spider-Man yet again. Um, I know there's a lot of people at this point because there's been so many videos on this channel about Spider-Man and not enjoying the book. And at a certain point, it comes like, well, why still read it? And I think for me, I just love the character of Peter Parker, and there is always hope that I have that they will turn it around. But I've got to be honest. The Zeb Wells run almost lost me. I really wanted Joe Kelly's run to be good. I actually have liked Joe Kelly's previous work on Spider-Man. There's an omnibus of Joe Kelly stories. I enjoyed quite a few of those, and so I had some hope that he would do well. I thought the whole Eight Deaths of Spider-Man thing that was set with the One World Under Doom, I thought it had its moments, and I thought it showed some potential. And so I was really not necessarily excited, but just hoping that this run would have some turnaround to it. And I gotta say, 6 issues in, I think we're just still as lost as ever on this comic. And there's some interesting dynamics. I don't want to say this is bad. Again, I think John Romita Jr. on there. It's not never bad to see that. Spider-Man work with Black Cat, never bad to see that. It's not that there's nothing enjoyable about the book. It's not the worst book you'll read. It's not something where I'm like upset with the book. But there is some things in here, and this has just been the part with Peter Parker lately where I feel like they always have to throw a wrinkle in that just doesn't fit for Peter. And so there's been this love interest that Peter's had, Shay Markin, who was added at the end of the Zeb Wells run. And so Peter's been trying to date her. Obviously, they have been putting, Peter as this slacker, man-child thing, and he won't tell her he's Spider-Man, so she thinks he's, completely, lost. This comic itself kind of has Peter talking about how good his life is going, but there's nothing really in this book that shows that happening at all other than his narration. But there was one huge portion of this book that I just thought just felt so off for Spider-Man. And so Peter goes to meet the Shay Markin character. He goes out for lunch. He's talking to her. Tries to plan a date with her, and she lets him know she's going on a date with someone else. And apparently, this is because while they're dating each other, they're not exclusive with each other. And so Peter's obviously shocked, but they kind of have it be like a humiliating thing, which I just thought was very weird to do that to Peter Parker. Again, I get the point they're trying to make is this girl thinks he's a slacker, and so she wants more commitment from him before she'll commit. But it was just a bad look for Peter. And then somehow they made it worse. And then Peter goes to kind of hang out with Black Cat. And while he's there, Black Cat's like, hey, you want to, fool around. And they basically imply that Peter's okay with that. Like Peter, even though he's pursuing this other girl, hangs out with Black Cat, and apparently, they fool around and stuff. And look, I don't think Peter should be wait. I wish Peter Parker would have just dropped the Shay girl after she said she was dating somebody else. But the fact that they now have Peter where it's like, well, I can fool around and mess around with people too, it just says something weird about the character. And that one of the things is, I'm not going to tell people what you should do in their dating life, but the problem for this is Spider-Man. This is Peter Parker. This is supposed to be an aspirational character. This is supposed to be a character who stands for something. And when you get Peter Parker into this weird quasi dating multiple people, being okay with other people dating other people. It's just, it doesn't fit him. It doesn't fit him as a superhero. It doesn't fit him as a character. And so it just makes him look weak across the board because he's still pining for this girl who's with somebody else. And then he wants Black Cat, but doesn't. It makes him look like a non-committal jerk. The other thing is if Peter and Black Cat have this relationship, it makes no sense for him not to be with Black Cat. And that's, again, this is just, to me, it's poor writing, and that there's no reason he shouldn't just be with Black Cat if this other girl's not committed to him. If he's not with Mary Jane, that was the whole reason he wasn't with Black Cat. They just don't understand that romantic angle of Peter Parker correctly anymore, and that it's just a weird, directionless thing. And this is not me sitting out here saying you need to get him back with Mary Jane. I think that would fix a lot of the problems. But the issue is, Peter Parker's love life is such a significant portion of the character. It's such a significant portion of what we're invested in, whether it's Betty Brant in the beginning stages, or Gwen Stacy and the heartbreak that came with that, or Mary Jane, and anymore. They're just really, really bad at writing that. And it just makes Peter come across as an unlikable character. And I just wish they would stop with that. Either have no element of it or have him commit to someone. But this weird thing they're doing now where they're trying to adjust him, like Peter's in open relationships or whatever. It's just weird. I think it's unbefitting of the superhero character of Spider-Man, especially given his history. I don't know. It just struck me as really, really wrong that they had that. Again, I don't think the book is horrible. J.R. Jr.'s art's pretty good. And there's some interesting and kind of funny narration from Peter, and it does look like his career's progressing a bit. So there is some growth throughout the book. I also will say I enjoy the aspect they're doing with Norman Osborn right now on a redemption arc, and that, I do hope they kind of stick with that for a while, and I think it's a really interesting wrinkle. But overall, there's just always an element that's off with Spider-Man, and that really bugged me while reading that. I'm like, why? Why is this element in there? It just seems like they don't know what they're doing at all with that. And it's disappointing because the book could be so much better than it is, but it just continues to be the same thing with Spider-Man, where they just can't seem to pick a lane. So disappointing book there. The rest of the books I will cover this week, I think, are all pretty solid and ones that I would certainly recommend for folks. So you have Batman and Robin Year One number 8. This is Mark Waid with Chris Samney. This duo is always fantastic when they're on books. They had a very, in my opinion, satisfying Daredevil run that was really fun and entertaining. They had an underrated, I think, Black Widow run after that, and their work with Captain America was really good as well. But this Batman and Robin book they're doing is absolutely perfect. It's ground that's been treaded before. It's the early years of Dick Grayson being Robin, obviously year one from the title. But there's just great character moments with Batman being a father trying to adjust to that and learn that role. You have a great interaction with him and Jim Gordon in the book that really hit very well. It's fun, it's interesting, exciting. There's great use of Clayface in this book. And there's great character moments for both Batman and Dick Grayson. There's a particular portion in the story where, Dick Grayson shows that he's becoming smart and more aware as a detective. And I just thought that was really cool to see that growth. This series has just been incredibly satisfying from the start. I'm really sad there's only 4 issues of this left. It's something where I kind of wish maybe they would have extended a little bit more, just kind of kept going. Hopefully, maybe there'll be a year 2 of this later. But this is a fantastic book. If you just want classic Batman, classic Robin, you want some great characterization of the Batman universe, Alfred Gordon, all the stuff that you'd want, would certainly recommend this. It's a great book. I think this was probably the best book of this week and has been a great series this year. A couple others that I would really recommend as well. Moon Knight, Fist of the Khonshu, number 9, Jed MacKay on this one. This was a cool psychological exploration of Moon Knight in this issue, in that he has been dealing with this kind of new drug that's been out there, and there's this Asgardian villain that he's been dealing with. And overall, there's a great build-up to what will come next from this. But I think one of the things is Jed MacKay's just done such a solid job on Moon Knight now for, I think, almost 4 years that he's been on the book. The art is just really, really solid on this book. I think it's Pramanik who is on the art here, which I hadn't really seen him before, but he's doing a good job approximating what Alessandro Cappuccio used to do in the book. It's fun, it's entertaining, it's a great character exploration of Moon Knight. He kind of puts himself through something because he doesn't want to risk someone else being harmed by it. And overall, the characters and the core cast that he's built around Moon Knight with Hunter's Moon and Tigra and 8 Ball and all these other characters that have assembled, it's really just become a solid superhero book every month that you can rely. It reminds me of older comics that used to have, where in like the 80s and the 90s, you could just walk in and grab basically your standard superhero book and it would be pretty good. And so I give Jed MacKay a lot of credit. I think this is a really satisfying book, continues to be great. If you just want an action-infused kind of comic book that's going to be solid and reliable every month, I think Moon Knight would definitely be a book that you should check out. Other book that I would really recommend for this week, Flash Gordon, number 10. Jeremy Adams is just doing such a great job on this. Tom Derenick was on the art. Looks like they're going to kind of do the Conan model of 2 artists, so Will Conrad an arc, and then Derenick on the other. This really wraps up the first kind of 10 issues of the story that have been told. There's been this ongoing narrative of, what's happening in Flash's world. But this is just such good, fun sci-fi escapism that takes place in this book. Flash Gordon has some really great moments in this book. You see some great moments with him and Dale. And overall, look, I'm not the biggest Flash Gordon guy. I'm not going to pretend that I know a ton about the character. There's obviously some older comics from Dynamite that I picked up, but I just think Mad Cave's done a fantastic job with this book. It's reliably fun, exciting, energetic, and sci-fi escapism. It reminds me of kind of older Star Wars type novels. And that those old the EU Star Wars books, they were always just such fun. They weren't like hugely deep or like trying to say something. It was just fun, reliable sci-fi storytelling. And that's been what Flash Gordon's been doing so well. Would certainly recommend this book to anybody. I think it's a great book to pick up. Last book I'll kind of recommend this month or this week, Superman Unlimited number 2. I really loved the first issue of this book. I thought the first issue was such a great job by DC. I do wish they'd released it closer to the film. but it largely was just supposed to be, hey, if you've never read a Superman comic book and you watch the movie, here's an introduction to the Man of Steel. You kind of have a follow-up to this where in that first issue, they established that kryptonite had become something where there's almost this continent that got a ton of kryptonite. They're weaponizing it, they're marketing it, and so the implications of that across the world are being felt in this book. And I think it's really cool to put that in a Superman book where now there's a lot of folks who can challenge Superman in different ways. And I think one of the reasons I like what Dan Slott did with that is there is a tendency with Superman to have where they have to keep one-upping the villains to a ridiculous level to make them a challenge for Superman. And now kryptonite being as ubiquitous as it is, it kind of makes it a great equalizer. There's also a new sort of solar powered type of thing they've done for Clark that I think is actually pretty well integrated and has an interesting wrinkle that could work within the Superman universe. Again, if they keep it up, it'll be interesting. But one of the things I think that I do like about this is sometimes we complain about comic books not taking chances, not taking risks, not changing things up. And I do want to say I think Dan Slott has done a good job of throwing some new wrinkles in, having an area where kryptonite is being used for everything, that becoming more popular, putting Superman and the Superman family more at risk, throwing some new powers in there that still don't like change Clark completely, but throw some new wrinkles. There's a time-based element in with it. I think it's interesting. I think there's a lot of storytelling potential that's in there. There's also a cool appearance from the Creeper in this book, the Jack Ryder character. We'll always like seeing him. Great to see a classic, Ditko creation show up in a comic. So I think that was great to see. But overall, I think there's some entertainment to be found here. There is a little bit of some things in here about Clark Kent as a reporter that weren't the most well written. So I won't say it's a perfect book or anything like that. But I do think there's some solid Superman entertainment to be found here, and I would certainly recommend folks pick that up. Last book I'll discuss for this week, Absolute Flash #4. It's interesting in that I think this was the best issue of the series so far, but I do wonder, how well this series is going to do overall. They've kind of put all the pieces on the board very differently, and I think it's very similar to kind of Absolute Batman, where you're positioning these characters a lot differently. I do just feel like it's too slow of a book, which is kind of crazy for a Flash book to be too slow, but it sort of feels like this should have been where we were after like issue 2. And so, while there is a little bit of mystery and intrigue that's happening, I do think this is a book that absolutely needs to pick up the pace. It's really weird because Jeff Lemire is a great writer. I think typically, if I've had any criticism of Jeff Lemire stories, it's been sometimes they move a little too quickly. I think his Green Arrow run, while fantastic, did that a little bit too much. This is just completely the opposite. It's a little too slow. The art is a little too often. Again, we have another new artist on this. So, we're at issue 4 and we're already, I believe, on our second artist for a comic book. I feel like DC needed to put a little more thought into the Absolute Flash book before it was launched. It by no means is bad. I'm still in on it, would still read it. But I do just wish there had been a little bit more that had been done to make this book stand out from the rest. Overall, that would be the stack for the week. Not the biggest week in terms of comics. Certainly, we've had weeks where there's been more, but I do think there's some really solid stuff if you want to check out Batman and Robin, Moon Knight, or Flash Gordon. And I think if you're a Superman fan who's lapsed, Superman Unlimited might be a good book for you to check out if you want to get back into the world of Kal-El. But let me know what you think down below. What were the best books that you read this week? If you did agree or disagree, completely okay. Love seeing your guys' thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. God bless you. I hope you have a great rest of your week.